Hey everybody, this is Atesh and I'm back with the final episode of Making Modern Metal Production Essentials before we move on to the Composition Essentials. Let's get started. Number 5, distance. So we talk about left and right panning in mixes, which is obviously really important. But I think we should also talk more about the back and forth, which creates distance. So say you have a melody line that you want up front, but there's another melody line that is a supporting line that you want a little in the back. So what do? Turn it down, sure, but you can also use a reverb to put it a little further in the mix. Let's go back to the cleanish part from the theme song for a second. I don't really want these guitars up front, that's why I added this reverb. But let's see how that changes things. First I'll play them solo and turn the reverb on and off. You can immediately hear them go away from the listener. And now I'll do the same in the mix. Here's another example. It's the beginning of a song I'm currently working on. It's really at the composition stage still. There's a little bit of a mix, but I need to re-record both the bass and the guitars, but still it should give you the idea. You might remember it from Getgood Drums Instagram and Facebook pages if you're following. This part is not necessarily metal, it's actually pretty calm, at least this part, but I thought it would be a good idea to show a calmer tune, especially if you're into this kind of contrast tunes like one part calm and one part wilder. Something like Tosca maybe. This is the part we'll talk about. It's, again, not that dense. What I generally think in terms of production is that the tune should work with not a lot of instruments. So this one has drums and bass and one guitar, panned slightly to the left, and one electric piano panned slightly to the right. What I'll show here is the electric piano, but first let's take a look at the guitars, because that is the starting element of this song. Now, I like having ambient elements in my songs, so I started with this clean guitar with delay on it. The main idea is that the delays and the reverb I'm using creates a pad type of thing. And by using the repetitions from the delay and holding some notes longer than others, I'm able to get different harmonies, sort of like a pool of harmonies. It's still rhythmic, but it is very calculated because of the nature of the delay. But it's also very open, and I wanted it to feel like it's being played in a huge space. Let's have a listen. So as you can see, it's two parts almost exactly the same. There's just one main difference, which is only an extra note. But that one note makes a huge difference, both in terms of space and also in harmony. And I have this electric piano that is supporting the guitar. Let's have a listen. So as you can hear, it is also very spacey. That's because I wanted this song generally to feel like it's being played on a big space. But by using different types of reverbs, I can adjust the distance of these different instruments so some of them would feel a little closer than the others. In this case, drums feel just a little bit closer, but you can still hear the reflections to make you feel like it's recorded in a bigger space. In that context, electric piano should also play well with the guitars and come from a little further away. So let's hear the keys with and without the reverb. This is the keys with the guitar. And let's hear it the same way in the mix. And again, I'm not saying like you should do one certain thing for one instrument. You can experiment and see. Which brings us to the next rule, which is to experiment. You might hear this quite often. Like I said before, these aren't hard rules that you need to follow. These are just some techniques and suggestions, and try and see if it works for you. But take your time, maybe sleep on it, maybe give it a week or so, and you don't have to use it. Anything you do is actually practice for your ears. I'm only going to show one example for this, as the idea should be fairly simple. Years ago, I made this song. It's not a complete song, it's just an idea, but when I wanted to make this into a full song, I didn't really like the melody played on the guitar. It's such a different feel than the first version, so it didn't really work. So I started experimenting and came to find out that it sounds better with a synth. So let's see both versions. First with the guitar. So here's the same melody played with a synth instead of guitar, which I like better. Okay, this is it for Making Modern Metal Production Essentials series. I will do more production videos, but a little later, and those will be a little more advanced than what we did here. Next in line is the Composition Essentials series. Before I finish the series, I have a couple of general reminders about production. In my opinion, production and composition and mixing go hand in hand so much. If I make a riff and I'm able to distribute that to separate instruments and I have a nice separation, that makes mixing job so much easier down the line. Another thing to remember is that we all have different personalities and we need to find what works for us. Something that works for someone doesn't need to work for us. For example, it makes perfect sense to separate the work to do. So if you finish writing a song first, then do the full production, then do the mixing, that makes your job so much easier. And by all means, if you can do that, just go for it, do that. But I have to be honest here, I still haven't learned how to do that. I want to hear good sounds coming out of my speakers. That is such a good motivation to keep going. So I do a little bit of mixing as I'm producing. Maybe in turn I'll spend a longer time, but I'm also super critical of myself. So there's a higher chance that I'll have to go back and change or fix some things down the line if I don't do this. I like hearing the parts coming out of the speaker as they should in the song. But of course, if you're in a roll, just keep writing and don't worry about this. Another thing that might sound a little obvious is learning how to listen. This will make you improve as a musician so much. And I don't mean that in a fun way, I mean in a really systematic way. Like taking several passes to listen to several different elements in the song. So maybe in the first pass you listen to the production, and in the other one you listen to the composition. The third pass you listen to, I don't know, how the high end sounds. Then you can have a listen to see how that feels and why it feels that certain way. Okay, these were some things to consider when making music. Now let's recap what we talked about in the series. We talked about double tracking, we talked about user center, we talked about less is more, we talked about prioritization, we talked about distance, and we talked about experimenting. If you missed the first 2 episodes, please go back and watch them. Thanks for joining in. I hope you liked the series. What did you find the most useful in these? Or what other production techniques do you use? Let me know in the comments section. Also, let me know what else you will want to see in this channel. If you like this video, please press like and hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell. There are many more videos on the way. Thanks again, stay safe, until next time.